It is the night of February 15th in 2003. The city lies silent. Apart from a few students, there's no one on the streets. What they don't know, only 10 meters below them, the heist of the century is taking place. A team of 5 men breaks into the world's best guarded vault. They open over 100 vault deposit boxes and steal gold, jewelry and diamonds worth more than 100 million euros. A man sits 300 meters away, tensely turning on his radio. This is the Antwerp diamond robbery.
More than 100 million euros in diamonds, gold and other jewellery was stolen.
The loot has not been found to date.
These thieves were the cream of the crop. They were from Italy, they were extremely accomplished, they were at the top of their game.
It was the heist of the century.
Summer 2001. Leonardo Notarbartolo is sitting in a cafe on Hovenierstraat. He's drinking a cappuccino and enjoying the view, but he's met with a strange sight. Men with suitcases handcuffed to them are hurrying by. They are accompanied by heavily armed security guards. Armored cars roll through the streets, and they all have one common goal: the Antwerp World Diamond Center. Every thief's dream. Men like Leonardo Notarbartolo. At this point, he had already carried out dozens of successful robberies. According to his own statement, it wasn't even about money. He robbed because he was born to do it. Turin, 1958. Even as a child, Leonardo showed the first signs of his talent. When he was only 6 years old, his mother sent him to buy milk. He came back, however, with 5,000 lira, equivalent to about $25 today. The milkman had fallen asleep and the little boy had searched his drawers. His mother punished him harshly, even hitting him, but he didn't care. Leonardo Notarbartolo had found his passion. Over the next few years, he refined his newly acquired skills. He stole from his teachers, learned lockpicking, and even started stealing cars. When he turned 20, he met his wife and even got married. He ended his career as a petty criminal and instead decided to learn to understand people. To do this, he traveled throughout all of Italy, stalking jewel dealers just to understand their habits. Based on his observations, he built a cover as a jewel importer and dealer. He soon became a respected business partner in the high circles of the diamond industry. And this wasn't just due to his great expertise. Leonardo placed great importance on proper self-presentation. Always well dressed, always in a good mood, always friendly. His charm gained him access to offices, trade fairs, and even vaults all over the world. There, he would usually buy a few small pieces of jewelry, only to steal the victim's entire inventory a week or a month later. And his skills wouldn't go unnoticed. Leonardo was just about to finish his cappuccino when a mysterious man sat down at his table. "Actually, I'd like to talk to you about something unusual," the man said casually. "Perhaps we could go for a walk." They set off, and once they left the neighborhood behind, the dealer resumed the conversation. His tone, however, had changed. The casualness was gone. "I'd like to hire you for a robbery," he said. "A big robbery." The assignment was simple. Notarbartolo would receive 100,000 euros from the man. In return, he was only supposed to answer one simple question: could the vault in the Antwerp Diamond Center be robbed? At first glance, an impossible task. Leonardo even rented a vault deposit box inside of the vault to prove it to the man. But what he would see shocked even him. In Antwerp, the heart of the diamond district, 80% of the world's rough diamonds come together. And the security measures are correspondingly high. Before an intruder even reaches the threshold of the diamond center, he must cross the Schubstraat, which resembles a restricted military area. Day and night, uniformed officers patrol the narrow streets. 63 video cameras monitor every inch of the premises and store faces in an eternal database. They are operated by 2 men in a bulletproof booth who are regularly replaced. The booth also contains the controls for the retractable steel cylinders. These were normally hidden in the ground, but could be extended in seconds to stop approaching vehicles. In the heart of the Schubstraat lies a 14-story fortress-like building, Antwerp's World Diamond Center. It houses a private security agency that has set up a veritable base at the entrance. Every stranger is stopped, searched, and questioned. His intentions are investigated, his identity verified. Only those who present a valid ID can enter the building through the heavy metal turnstiles. To now reach the vault, you have to take a secured elevator 2 floors underground, down to a small claustrophobic room where more money is stored than almost anywhere else in the world. It is secured by a 3-ton steel vault door with 6 security points. There is a dial with the numbers 0 to 99. To open the vault, 4 numbers must first be selected, the digits of which are only visible through a small lens on top of the dial. In total, this means 100 million possible combinations. Additionally, there's a small metal plate on the vault door and on the wall of the right to it. When activated, the plates create a magnetic field. However, when the door is opened, this field is interrupted and an alarm is triggered, unless a code has been entered into a nearby keypad. And finally, the lock had to be opened with a 30 cm long key, which was considered almost impossible to duplicate. The vault itself is equipped with motion, heat and light detectors from the inside. Cameras transmit every movement to the security service, and the transmission is recorded on video. The safe deposit boxes themselves require a key and combination to open. There are 17,576 locks per compartment. After inspecting and analyzing the pictures he had taken with a hidden camera in the shape of a pen, Leonardo was certain. The vault was one of the toughest targets he had ever seen. He didn't believe it could be robbed, until the mysterious man proved him wrong. 5 months after entering the vault, Leonardo received a call. His client wanted to meet him. He was given an address and drove to an abandoned warehouse outside Antwerp, where he was already expected. As they entered the hall, Leonardo could hardly believe his eyes. He was standing in the anteroom of the vault again. To his left was the vault door. On its right, the plate for the magnetic field. He was standing in an exact replica of the vault level of the Diamond Center. Everything was the same. Come, I'd like to introduce you to a few people. Elio de Honorio, aka the Genius, the specialist when it came to alarm systems. He claimed to be able to deactivate almost every alarm and was the key man for the job. Ferdinando Finotto, aka the Monster, a tall, muscular man. He earned his nickname because he was monstrously good at everything he did. Another reason was that all of the other members were somewhat afraid of him. Finotto was an expert lockpicker, electrician and mechanic. Pietro Tavano, aka Speedy, a fearful, paranoid man and childhood friend of Notarbartolo. His task was to maintain contact with Leonardo during the heist. And lastly, a member who remains unknown to this day, the King of Keys, a quiet older man. In the group, he was known as the best key forger in all of Europe. His job was to counterfeit the 30 cm long key. "Can you open it?" asked Leonardo, pointing at the replica of the vault. "Most of it," the genius replied with a smile. "But you also have to do 1 or 2 things. Among these things was a seemingly impossible task, taking a clear video of the 30 cm long key. Luckily, the genius already had a plan. September 2002, Antwerp. The security guard that day approached the vault door and began turning the combination dial. He was perfectly on time, but directly above his head, protected by the glow of a lamp, every move was being recorded. A red fire extinguisher hangs on the wall, next to it, a door to a storage room. It was fully functional, but a waterproof compartment inside housed electronics that recorded and stored the video signal. After entering the combination, the security guard inserted the vault key. His biggest mistake, because the camera Leonardo had placed there 2 days ago recorded a sharp image before the key could disappear into the hole. He turned the handle and the door sprang open. 2 days later, Leonardo was just raising his hand to knock on a red door when it burst open. "It's about time that you're here. Where is it?" asked the King of Keys, glaring at him irritably. "I came as fast as I could," Leonardo replied calmly. He handed the man a brown package containing the camera and printed pictures of the vault key. "Nothing can stop us now," he said, a smile spreading across his face. 2 days before the robbery, the dull roar of a police helicopter echoes over the deserted streets. It drowns out the convoy of police cars escorting an armored truck. The escort is brimming with firepower. They belong to a special unit protecting diamond shipments. Each police officer carries at least one fully automatic weapon. Their cargo, a diamond shipment worth several million euros. The target of Notarbartolo and his crew. Leonardo stood on a balcony, watching the convoy through binoculars as they passed by. One thing was immediately clear to him. The right time had finally come. Leonardo went into the vault the next day, February 14th. He was alone and had nothing with him, except for a can of hand spray in his right hand. He used it to disable the heat and motion detectors. The surveillance cameras recorded everything, but the security guard had become so accustomed to Leonardo's frequent visits that he paid no attention. Now, everything was prepared, and nothing stood in the way of Leonardo's genius plan. And on February 15th, the time had come. Leonardo parked the getaway car, a grey Peugeot 307, on Pelikanstraat and turned off the engine. The genius, the monster, the king of keys and Speedy got out. Armed with large bags, a shield and other tools, they set off into the dark night. The man crept through a construction site to the rear of the diamond center. Using a hidden ladder, the genius climbed onto a small terrace on the second floor. A heat-sensitive sensor monitored the terrace and would have caught most thieves, but not the genius. He approached the sensor behind a large riot shield. The low thermal conductivity of the polyester prevented his body heat from reaching the sensor. He placed the shield directly in front of the sensor, so it could no longer detect anything. The balcony was now safe. While the rest of the team started climbing up, the genius deactivated an alarm sensor on one of the balcony windows. One by one, the thieves climbed through the window, and all of a sudden they were in the World Diamond Center of Antwerp, supposedly the safest place in the world. There was complete silence as they slowly descended the stairs through the darkness. At the bottom, the genius gave a signal and the man stopped abruptly. The king of keys standing behind the genius slowly peered around the corner and saw nothing. They were completely alone in the large entrance hall of the World Diamond Center. They slowly moved through the entrance hall and entered the elevator. With a quiet ding, the doors closed and the four men descended into the depths, into the dark anteroom of the vault. Down there, they covered every camera in their path with black plastic bags. Only when they were absolutely sure that they had caught everything did they turn on the lights. And there it was, the vault with its 3-ton steel door. For a moment, it was dead silent. And then everything happened very quickly. The genius pulled out a specially made aluminum plate from his pocket and attached it with strung double-sided tape. He stuck it to the 2 magnetic plates on the right-hand side of the door vault and removed their bolts. The magnetic plates were now loose, but the sticky aluminum held them together, allowing the genius to swing them away and stick them to the anteroom wall. The plates were still next to each other and active. The magnetic field didn't fluctuate, but they no longer monitored the door. Meanwhile, the king of keys was pursuing a suspicion. In Notarbartolo's video, the guards always went into a utility room shortly before opening the vault. When the thieves searched the room, they could hardly believe their luck. The original key was there. The king of keys grabbed it swiftly. There was no point in letting the vault manufacturers know that their valuable key could be copied, and this way the police still didn't know a duplicate had been made. The king of keys inserted the original into the keyhole and waited while the genius entered the combination they had learned from the video. The genius nodded. A moment later, the monster turned off the lights again. They didn't want to trigger the light detectors inside of the vault if the door opened. In the darkness, the king of keys turned the key and pressed a 4-pronged handle. The bolts securing the door retracted and it swung heavily open. Speedy ran up the stairs. He wanted to inform Leonardo, but there was no cell reception down in the vault. "We are in," he said and hung up. Notarbartolo put his cell phone back on the dashboard. He was sitting in the Peugeot and could see the facade of the Diamond Center a block and a half away. His police radio was silent. He took a sip of cold coffee and waited. In the anteroom, the King of Keys deftly picked the lock on the metal gate. He shuffled backwards, while the monster held the gate open with 2 cans of paint he had found in the storage room. Now, it was up to him to deactivate the remaining systems. The monster oriented himself in the darkness towards the vault entrance. The only sound was the steady breathing of the others behind him. His body was already radiating heat into the vault. The hairspray on the infrared sensor wouldn't last long. Every second he spent in there would increase the ambient temperature. He faced an almost impossible challenge. He had to move quickly, but also keep his heart rate low. As he had practiced in the warehouse, he took exactly 11 steps to the center of the room. There, he reached to the ceiling and pushed back a panel. He felt for the main cables of the security system, the heart of the insurmountable security system. A device outside the vault continuously sent electric pulses through the room and along the wires to confirm an uninterrupted circuit. These wires were connected to every sensor, every camera, and every motion detector. If any of them failed to conduct the pulse, the circuit would break and trigger an alarm. The monster knew what depended on him. If he triggered one of the sensors, the alarm would go off. With his hands raised above his head, the monster used a tool to remove the plastic coating from the wires. A single slip was enough to break the circuit and trigger the alarm. Once the copper wires were exposed, he clamped a new pre-cut piece of wire between the input and output cables. This bridge redirected the incoming electrical impulse to the output line before the signal reached the sensors. What happened further down the line no longer mattered. The sensors were no longer in play. The others could now enter safely. Nevertheless, the men were cautious. They covered the heat and motion detectors with a styrofoam box, taped the light detector, and got to work. The King of Keys took out a homemade hand drill and attached a thin metal shaft to it. He rammed the shaft into one of the locks and cranked it for about 3 minutes, until the lock broke and the box opened. The men took turns removing the contents. Since they had mesmerized the layout of the vault in the mock-up, they worked in the dark. They turned on their flashlights for only a fraction of a second, just enough to position the drill over the next box. But in those brief moments, they glimpsed their overflowing pockets of gold bars, millions of Israeli, Swiss, American, European and British currencies, and leather bags containing their gold vein, rough and polished diamonds. They resisted the urge to examine their loot. They were running out of time. By 5:30 AM, just under 5 hours after breaking into the building, they had opened 109 boxes. For a long time, a feeling of elation had reigned in the dark vault, but they had to stop. The streets would soon fill with people, and they had to load their bags into Notarbartolo's car. Speedy relayed the message to him. They would come out. It took the team almost an hour to drag the bags up the stairs, get past the infrared sensor, lower the loot down the ladder, and gather on the construction site. Leonardo waited at the curb while he talked to Speedy on the phone. In the twilight, the 4 heavily laden men ran towards his car. They stuffed the bags into the car, slammed the doors, and disappeared in different directions. Leonardo put the car in gear and drove off slowly. Half an hour later, they were huddled around the bags in an apartment Leonardo rented as cover. The monster opened one and took out a leather bag. It was time to celebrate. He opened the bag and looked up with satisfaction. Hundreds of tiny diamonds glittered before his eyes. The man couldn't hold back any longer and ripped open all of the other bags as quickly as they could. Soon, banknotes, gold coins and diamonds were scattered all over the floor. But they didn't care. They were set for life. Each of them was now a rich man. 2 days later, Speedy and Leonardo drove out of Antwerp on the E19. He settled down for the 10-hour drive back to Turin. The garbage bag containing incriminating evidence was on the back seat. Leonardo planned to stop in France and burn it without leaving any trace of the crime. But Speedy was having trouble. His face was ashen, and his gaze darted wildly at the cars around them. Finally, after only 20 minutes of driving, he snapped. "I can't do this," he said. Leonardo tried to calm him down. He told Speedy to take it easy. He would even drop him off at the train station in Brussels if he wanted. Perhaps it would be more pleasant to make the trip without his friend driving him crazy. "We can't take the garbage to Brussels," stammered Speedy. Instead, they had to unload the bag immediately. "Drive up here," he said abruptly from the passenger seat. Notarbartolo took the exit and looked out into the dark surroundings. "There's a dirt road," said Speedy, peering into a forest. "This is perfect." But it wasn't perfect. It was the beginning of the end. August van Camp loved nature, so much so that in 1998 he bought a narrow strip of forest along the E19. It was about a 5-minute drive from his house, and if you ignored the sounds of cars speeding past at 80 miles per hour, it was a lovely 5 hectares of forest with a babbling lake. But because the forest bordered the highway, Van Camp found a lot of trash. Local youths once decided to have a party there and burned down a small hut he had built. This made him angry. One morning, specifically on Monday, February 17th, Van Camp was once again furious when he found another pile of trash in the undergrowth. After a flash of anger, he knelt down and stared at the trash. Videotapes were scattered everywhere. A wine bottle sat next to a half-eaten salami sandwich. Also, several white envelopes labeled World Diamond Center, Antwerp were lying around. He saw only one solution. He had to call the police to vent his anger. Leonardo and Speedy parked in a spot not visible from the highway. He told Speedy to stay there and got out to explore. He passed a rusty, dilapidated gate that looked like it hadn't been touched since World War II. It was hard to see in the dark, but the place seemed perfect. He decided to burn the stuff near a shed next to a small pond and went back to the car. But when he got there, he couldn't believe his eyes. Speedy had lost control. The contents of the garbage sack lay around scattered among the trees. Speedy trudged through the mud, throwing paper into the undergrowth. A half-eaten salami sandwich lay in the dirt. The mud around the car was littered with dozens of tiny glittering diamonds. It would take hours to collect and burn everything. "I think someone's coming," Speedy said. Notarbartolo glared at him. Speedy's breathing was rapid and shallow. The man was obviously having a panic attack. They drove off. No one would ever find this stuff here. If only he had known how wrong he was. By mid-afternoon, 10 lab technicians had already arrived at the crime scene in the woods. Among them were the 2 lead investigators, Pace and De Bruycker, a well-rehearsed team that had solved many cases together. They watched as the lab technicians carefully collected the trash and the scattered gems. Van Camp was also satisfied. Finally, his problem was taken seriously. The evidence was brought back to Antwerp. There, it was examined by a forensic expert. A stack of torn paper seemed promising. It didn't take long to put the pieces back together like a puzzle. It was an invoice for a low-light video surveillance system. The buyer, Leonardo Notarbartolo. Meanwhile, investigators on site found further incriminating evidence. A business card with a phone number protruded from the mud. On it was the name of an Italian electrical expert, Elio De Honorio. The lab technicians also bagged a half-eaten salami sandwich. They found a nearby wrapper for Antipasto Italiano salami and sent it to the Diamond Squad headquarters. 4 days later, the investigators executed a search warrant for Notarbartolo's rented apartment in Antwerp. In a closet, they found a receipt from a local grocery store for Antipasto Italiano salami. The receipt was time-stamped. The investigators drove to the grocery store and asked the manager to rewind his surveillance camera to 12:56 p.m. on Thursday, February 13th. When the video stopped and came into focus, an image of a tall, muscular Italian man buying salami appeared. His name, Ferdinando Finotto, the monster. On Monday, about 36 hours after completing the job, the gang of thieves met again in a bar in Arro, Italy, a small town about 80 kilometers northeast of Milan. They had agreed to meet the mysterious man there and divide the loot. The dealer was to receive a third for financing the operation and assembling the group. The others were supposed to share the rest, but the dealer didn't show up. Notarbartolo was already worried about what had happened in the forest. He knew he had made a mistake. He should have turned around after dropping Speedy off at the train station and gone back to burn the trash. It was a rookie mistake, but what really annoyed him was that he'd vouched for his friend and the guy had gone ballistic. They waited at the bar until it closed, drinking espresso and then beer. The dealer, however, didn't show up. On Thursday evening, Notarbartolo was having dinner with his family at home outside Turin. He tried to pretend everything was normal. As always, his 3-year-old granddaughter was playing with his cell phone and making him laugh. He forgot his worries just for a moment, but only for a moment. His biggest problem was that he had to return to Belgium. The getaway car, which was only rented, was supposed to be in Antwerp the next day. The plan was to return it and report to the Diamond Center. That way, he wouldn't be on the list if the police were looking for missing tenants. It would also give him the opportunity to clean his apartment more thoroughly. He told his family he would be leaving early the next morning. His wife decided to come along. She hadn't seen much of him lately. Maybe they could even have a nice dinner with friends from the Netherlands. The next morning, as the Notarbartolo family sped through the Swiss Alps, police surrounded their house in Italy. Based on the surveillance system Bill found on Fort Camp's property, Belgian diamond investigators had commissioned Italian police to search Notarbartolo's house. His 24-year-old son Marco was there and refused to open the front door. He frantically dialed his father's number while the police broke down the door. "Come on, answer the phone!" He screamed desperately into the phone, his gaze repeatedly darting towards the door, which would burst off its hinges at any moment. His cell phone flashed in Leonardo's jacket pocket, but made no sound. His granddaughter had accidentally turned off the ringer the night before. Marco called his mother. Her mobile was off too. He tried his father repeatedly, but it just rang. Unsuspecting, Leonardo sped towards Antwerp. Meanwhile, Pace and Deboka wondered if they would ever catch the thieves. They could be anywhere by now. Brazil, Thailand, Russia. They were only certain in one thing. The perpetrators would never simply return to the neighborhood. But that's exactly what Leonardo did. While one of his friends from the Netherlands was waiting on the street in front of the World Diamond Center, he waved to the security guard and picked up his mail. The security guard knew that the police were investigating Leonardo and called the building manager, who immediately notified the criminal investigation department. When the police arrived, they found him talking to the building manager and began bombarding him with questions. His friend took off, and Leonardo tried to buy time by pretending to have difficulty with French and claiming he couldn't remember the exact address of his own apartment. "Let's go then," said Pierce, and loaded the Italian into the car. Leonardo caved in and led them to the apartment. As the police car pulled up to the curb, Notarbartolo's wife and the friends who had come for dinner were just leaving the building. One more minute and they would have been gone, but so the police arrested all of them. The bags contained important evidence. Police found a number of prepaid SIM cards linked to mobile phones used almost exclusively for calls to 3 Italians: Elio De Honorio, aka The Genius, Ferdinando Finotto, aka The Monster, and the person who had betrayed everyone else with his panic attack, Speedy, alias Pietro Tavano. The day after Leonardo's arrest, the Italian police broke into the safe in his house in Turin. They found 17 polished diamonds with certificates, which the Belgian diamond investigators tracked back to the vault. More gemstones were recovered from the rolled-up carpet in Leonardo's apartment in Antwerp. The Belgian court showed no mercy. They found Leonardo guilty of organizing the robbery and sentenced him to a fine of 10,000 euros and 10 years in prison. Using the phone call records and DNA evidence from the salami sandwich, Belgian investigators convinced French police to search Finotto's girlfriend's house on the French Riviera. They seized marked $100 bills that investigators said belonged to one of the world's diamond center's victims. The trial dragged on, but the monster was finally arrested in Italy in November 2007 and served a 5-year prison sentence. Pietro Tavano also served a 5-year prison sentence in Italy for his crimes. However, his lawyer refused to testify on his behalf. Leonardo's DNA was found on some adhesive tape left in the vault. He was handed over to Belgium in November 2007 to begin a 5-year sentence. The fifth thief was never identified, although police knew of his existence through cell phone records and DNA evidence. Even to this day, the King of Keys remains at large. And the loot from the heist of the century? No one knows. It was never found. To this day, diamonds worth more than 100 million euros lie hidden somewhere in the Italian Alps, and are just waiting to be found.